Now, very different on we talked through native cloud PC scenarios. So we're looking forward to getting into that, and this is going to kind of drive into those use cases.
Now,
Um,
we run into the cloud PC deployment scenarios. We have the concept of dedicated. So dedicated was the primary one that they had, the first one. That's really the one to one persistent. The MHN, ANC, what he spoke about that. The MHN, Microsoft hosted networks. Think about that's the hands off. That's just their network. You don't do anything. ANC, Azure Network connecting the connectivity connection into your environment. As both of those are available for it, contractors, developers, general purpose. The point being is it's full one to one persistent, full feature support. So all the features that come out are always dedicated in the dedicated SKU first. And then it moves from there to where it's more limited into some of these, the front
Yep.
line.
Yeah, so on the frontline dedicated side, it really came out from like shift work, right? Call centers, different time zones, shift-based work. That's really where it made sense to go frontline. And I'll tell you what, the bang for the buck is pretty incredible because for a single license, you're allowing 3 users. And the key there is that we did this with this arc, this little diagram here. If you noticed the detail, there's one orange user and two gray users, because essentially you'd get three desktops provisioned, each individually to a user, but only one can be used at a given time. But those are dedicated, they're locally persistent. Your app installs and things like that are all there, right? There's no FS logics, there's no profile management because it's a dedicated, personalized desktop. But because it's frontline, you can only access it one at a time. If you attempt to access it, it's going to say someone else is using it. Now that kind of leads into a scenario, where we talk about concurrency and shift work. There are changes times where, hey, someone's late to work. Maybe they're a late riser like myself, and they're coming in a little bit late. Someone's leaving a little bit early. There is a concurrency buffer that Microsoft has and some calculations that they go into detail in the documentation that talks through like supporting that scenario. So you're not hitting like a brick wall, right? There is limited support from compared to what you'd have in dedicated mode. So things like being able to resize, because that is something that does come up. Maybe you have a 2x8 and you realize, I need a 4x16. You can do that as simple as updating a license and not lose your work. But you can't do that in frontline mode. And so that's something that is coming. And just like anything in the cloud, stuff moves quick. And so these features are coming quickly. Being able to move, we've seen that with customers where they actually move between regions. They're taking their PC and they're moving it across regions. Can't do that here, and cross-regional DR is not supported. This does support Entra in hybrid mode, and we'll talk through Entra join as well as hybrid, meaning AD joined into Entra ID, and then both Microsoft hosted network and Azure network connection. Key across all these is client OS, right? No, again, not server OS as Oz had mentioned. And frontline shared is tech preview. That's where it gets into this pooled model that we're all in the EC world used to, right? And um coming back, right, from the non-persistent world to persistent. This is a little bit of a shift back where, hey, maybe it makes sense where I want to have a pool. This is considered, there's no buffer, it's a limit. If I buy 30 licenses, I'm going to get 30 of these desktops. But it needs to be this scenario where you don't care about persistence. Spin them up, and essentially you're paying for them as a full license, but they're basically a pool based environment, reset after each use. And again, same on the limitation around the features there. So just a note on that.
Yeah, and there's a question here. Just is this cost effective from David for a few devices? And the answer is yes, it definitely can be. Just know the cloud PC is a fixed SKU, which is it's nice and easy, right? So it gives you that you know what you're going to be paying every month. You don't have to worry about it. I don't have to power it down to save costs and all that. No, you don't do any of that. So you're just paying your bill like you are for any subscription service at home every month. You know exactly what it's going to be. That's a lot easier, especially if you get a small footprint of users that need something. You don't necessarily then, especially if you're using the Microsoft hosted network and you don't need to connect anything on prem. You got to keep it simple. Keep it simple,
Yeah,
right?
one user and pay, was it $40 for a 2x8, 60
Yep.
bucks for a 4x16, and single user is fine. Like it's when he's gonna hit on the Microsoft MHN, Microsoft hosted network. He's gonna hit on that now, and you'll see why it makes sense.
Yeah, that keeps it all self-contained, the MHN, right? So you don't even build out the ANC. We don't have to worry about a landing zone. So the costs, the upfront costs of building anything out and designing that solution is really the bare minimum. There's nothing, right? So it's just there. If you're just using OneDrive and M360, O365 apps, SaaS web apps, things like that, you're not connecting anything on-prem. You don't have any crazy, complicated stuff that you got to do connecting to other services. You can use the MHN, you can have a couple desktops, not a lot of upfront costs at all, right? So you can even do micro V. If you're a Citrix customer, bonus, it's kind of our bonus play, right? UHMC includes SPA. Citrix just unlocked the ability to use all that fun feature set that you have in there within a cloud PC without any additional licensing. So for our Citrix customers that are also like spreading their eggs across a few baskets, um, you can basically use their micro VPN within an MHN network to talk back to other stuff into your network. Let's say you do have that, that still keeps it zero trust, keeps the really small. There's no full VPN coming back. So you have that capability. Entra join only must be Intune managed for MHN. So that gets into the device identity side when we're talking about this. He mentioned hyper join and so on and so forth. The device identity and what that looks like. These are Entra join only, meaning Intune has to be in place. So you do have to get familiar with Intune and using Intune. It's pretty intuitive as you get in there. I like Intune. I'm by no means an Intune master, but for Cloud PC and what we use it for there and doing basic management and policy things and provisioning, it's pretty intuitive. So it has to be Intune manages. It matches that model of deploying physical laptops, like Shane mentioned. Um, it kind of gives you that autopilot feel like for physical. Best for again SaaS, M365, OneDrive, so on and so forth, because it's all self-contained going out to egress to the internet. You don't have to talk back to something, right? So
Yeah, and just like you said, like physical laptops. Think of that when we saw that contractor use case, you're all the logistics required to get a physical laptop to a user. You're paying that $2,000, whatever a laptop costs these days, right? You're paying that, you're shipping it out to them. In this case, you can spin it up. Maybe it's a temp worker for 3 months. We'll talk about life cycle, but essentially moving that user out of the group, it deprovisions it for you. You don't have to touch anything, right? So you pay for that user for 3 months and it's gone, right? You just threw it away. And it's a really and just like a laptop, right? They're 100% disconnected to your network unless you VPN in or use some kind of app delivery service. Same thing on the Microsoft hosted network side. So on the ANC side, that's where things get a little bit interesting, right? And so ANC Azure network connection, there was a question that came in around like, hey, I have Azure NetApp files today. I have Azure files. I want to integrate with that. You can do that. This is basically the leg in. And when we show, I'll flip back and forth for a second here through this, and that's why I love these real time collaborations up at top. If you look here, basically you can see where it says customer Azure subscription, right? You'll see Azure Network Connection here. There's an arrow going down. You're essentially dropping a NIC into your subscription in a resource group, and now you have a construct, a network device on a VNet, on a subnet that can talk to on premises. It can talk to Active Directory for hybrid, can talk to Azure Network NetApp files. And so it gives you that ability to go back to your on premise or another, your Azure environment, right? So you 100% can talk to things, database services, app services outside. ANC is your leg in without having to have the VPN. And all you're managing in your subscription, there's no desktops, right? You're just managing a NIC. That's it. And there's nothing, it's just a NIC, right? But you have to manage the networking, right? You need your NVA, you need your user defined route to route that traffic. That's where that kind of comes in. Yeah, the flexibility side, this was something that came up recently as we were talking through this. Your NIC essentially, your cloud PC can be in one region, and essentially you can have a region that's very close that has the NIC. And we'll talk through a scenario here shortly, why that, what that actually looked like. And this was the architecture that we had just mentioned. I just wanted to show it what it looks like there. I'll talk through this relatively quickly here. This is just more about the this is really good stuff. So those are the QR codes. Just setting up SSO, enter join, can get a little complicated, but this kind of walks through just trials and tribulations here, getting it all working. So really it's line of sight to the DNS, TCP, UDP, needs to be set up, firewall rules, Kuros object, like just take note of this, and we'll go through kind of these items. in one of these deployments, it really helps to have this ahead of time. So
Just know there's a lot that's involved there. And these are the kind of gotchas that come up, especially when you're doing entre join only, right? And you're wanting to do some of this special stuff, right? So,
yeah,
lessons learned for us on that side of things. And as we get into the life cycle management, so we had a question earlier on, you were asking about, once I deploy these desktops, like on the cloud PC side, can I continuously update them? And the answer is no, not through like an MCS orchestration or what have you, especially on the cloud PC side. But there is a concept of a custom image that you can use to rebuild those, or you can start with a custom image. And then once they're deployed, the cloud PC, they're persistent desktops. So they're out there in the wild, and doing their thing. And so you have to use other tools for that, right? For that purpose. And what we're going to show here is Nerdio can also front end these steps as well, the provisioning policy piece. And I'll let Shane kind of talk through the video here.
yep, yeah. And so we got this video here, and if I click next, it should start playing. Let's see, is it? You might have to hit play. I might have clicked it. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, so basically Intune integration, right? So you'll see it right there under Intune, under devices, you'll see Windows 365. You'll see across the top, right? You'll have all cloud PCs. So you're gonna see all your cloud PCs along with the statuses, the provisioning policy, the image, Azure network connection, what region it's a part of, what user it's assigned to. You'll see your provisioning policies, right? And we're gonna actually walk through creating one here, but custom images, that's what Oz just mentioned, your Azure network connection, your user settings, if you're going to configure those snapshots and backup. So when you go to configure a provisioning policy, this is where you determine your licensing type. Are you going to be enterprise? Are you going to be frontline? You can go ahead and name it. Are you going to be entry joined? Are you going to be hybrid joined? Are you going to be Microsoft hosted network or Azure network connection? And you choose your geography. You're not building a landing zone, right? You're just determining where do you want to deploy this desktop. And then for simplicity, Gallery Image is great. It's out of the gate. It's ready to go. It's got Office 365. And because we're in Intune, if we have everything configured, it's going to come up like autopilot and start installing your apps. You have a naming convention. You can do scopes from a management perspective. Essentially assign it to an Entra group. That's it. When you assign it to your Entra group, you're dropping users in there. Provisioning policy picks it up and it starts building your desktops. You don't have to worry about actually going in and doing, MCS and all these different things. It's basically just dropping a user in a group. And so that's it's as simple as that. So now what you'll notice here is, oh, is it still going? Okay. Yeah. So basically what you'll see if you go and click on a desktop, um, you'll actually it looks just like Intune at that point, right? You can see all the different things around compliance and policies, and you can resize it from here. You can reprovision it from an admin perspective. But we wanted to show is a little kind of sprinkling in, enrich from a observability standpoint. If you have the browser plugin, you're going to see the control up data right in the Intune console. So being able to get a lot more observability on the metric side, event log information, memory, CPU, disk, being able to take remote control action, being able to deploy scripts, remote shell, all that's possible inside of Intune if you're a control up customer through Enrich. So just FYI on that.